Hey, Steelers Nation, it's Joe Rockey with the Pittsburgh Syndicate coming back at you for another episode. In today's episode, I'm actually going to be commenting or responding to some comments that I got from some of our earlier episodes. The first was the conversation we had about the running back depth that the Steelers have, saying that, hey, Joe, it's really nice that we got a guy who could potentially beat out McFarland. It's really nice that Warren turned on. But both Warren and McFarland don't exactly have pedigree. And when there's a guy out there who has great pedigree that we could go pick up, why shouldn't the Steelers do that instead of rolling the dice on younger guys? So that's what today's episode is going to be. We're going to analyze the three most likely prospects out there at the running back position and see if it makes sense for the Steelers to bring them in. So, looking at two of these guys being free agents, they're still unemployed. And when we say, who are you going to pick up? These are the two names that come to name. Yeah, they're name brand names. It's Zeke and Hunt. So I'm going to start with Zeke. Zeke obviously is down in Dallas. First round pick, super high. And last year he ended up splitting carries with Tony Pollard. It was the highest scoring offense in the league last year. And Zeke had a lot to do with that. He was splitting carries when all said and done. He's not a one-back guy anymore. But he was able to give hard, meaningful runs in a power blocking scheme, especially when offensive linemen were pulling in front of him, and put up really good results. Now, granted, he had games where he disappeared. I'm not going to try to say that he was all the be-all. There's a reason Dallas didn't bring him back. But when he was on, and especially looking at how some of their plays looks like the Steelers just copied them, especially since they came 2 weeks later. But that's a side story. Zeke was producing in them, and they were things that were implemented verbatim into the Steelers when you look at the film back and forth. And Zeke was taking plays into 6-yard runs consistently behind pulling guards, especially when two offensive linemen pulled. And it's something that it's worth considering, but it's going to go back to a bigger Tomlinism that has existed since the beginning. Tomlin has this thing, and it's totally justifiably so. Najee is my best player on first down. Najee is my best player on second down. Najee is my best player on third down. Najee is in the game. And it's hard to fight that. He did the same thing with Le'Veon. He did the same thing with Connor, except for when they were hurt. And that's the risk, right? Does the overemphasis make it hard to play 22 games? Because that's what you got to do. That's what it's going to take to be able to go out and win this whole thing. So are we going to be able to do it if we're taking Najee into the ground? Well, in the past, we've had this, like it's a new argument. It's a Tomlin thing. We brought in Blunt, and boom, that guy, it's thought he was getting the ball way more than he did. He didn't. Ran away, made his life hell here. We cut him. He went up to New England and, came to pass. So if we're going to bring in a free agent, especially someone who has the pedigree of Zeke, the resume of Zeke, are you going to be able to say, hey, you need to accept the fact that even Warren, after he had turned it on, won Tomlin's trust, the second that Najee got healthy, Warren only had one game with more than 10 carries after that. So does it make sense? Are you willing to accept it if you're Zeke to say, hey, I'll come here for 5 carries a game and basically accept the fact that this is the end of my career? And also we're going to pay you accordingly to that as well. So there's nothing really in Zeke's bio that even suggests that was even be a remote possibility. So I just bring him up because he's the name that everyone knows. I don't think it's likely. Then we look at Hunt. Would Hunt make sense? Well, when he was in Cleveland, he was more the pass-catching one. He's not really giving you the great between the tackles action, and he doesn't have breakaway speed. I don't think Hunt at this moment in time is an upgrade over Warren. So I wouldn't consider Hunt at all. Even if he was free, I don't think I would want him. Because I'd rather give the opportunity to Hunter to try to step himself up and see the potential there when I know that Hunt is probably not going to be a value add to this team, not to mention the fact he doesn't play special teams. So then we go, okay, are there any other options that are out there? And yes, there is. For some reason, the Minnesota Vikings now hate Dalvin Cook. Could be his injury history, but the guy's a winner. And I remember what he did to the Steelers. That was gross. That was 2 years ago, and basically said, as soon as they found a weak point on us, which was we still had not, at that point, we still had not replaced Tuitt, and they just broke us. And Dalvin Cook was how they did it. And Dalvin Cook is an upgrade over Warren. No questions asked. You bring him in here for a couple of snaps a game, maybe even we do something a little bit more advanced, say just Cook, you get the whole second quarter, which I would be okay with. It's definitely outside of Tomlin's protocol. But the question then becomes, what would Minnesota want in return? And to this point, I'm actually going to go to a broader, same category of problem, but show it out loud. For those of you playing fantasy, you're going to get this immediately. Adams was at Green Bay, great receiver, Devontae Adams. He was very good with Carr as a Raider because he loves running downfield, running a vertical set, and Carr would throw him the ball like crazy. Jimmy G cannot do that at all. He doesn't want to do that. And they've come out and said that, and Adams said, I want to get traded. And by all reports out of Vegas, he was going to get either 2 seconds or a first if he went, and they were specifically talking about the Jets in this story, but if he got moved. However, the moment that DeAndre Hopkins got cut by Arizona, the trade value of Adams fell through the floor. And then you go, Joe, how can that be? Adams didn't get any less talented just because someone else got cut who cheated, took steroids, and is probably on the back end of his career. All of that is true. But in the mindset of the NFL, would I rather pay for a 93 when I can buy an 87 for no draft resources? And that is why Adams' value fell through the floor, possibly even to the point where the Raiders say it's not worth doing it. And I bring this up specifically because it's the exact same situation with Cook. Cook has the middle ground of Zeke and Hunt. Zeke's a better power runner. Hunt's a better scat guy. Cook's a better combination. I'd rather have him out of the three. But when we look at this and you're saying I'm a GM, why should I pay anything of value to you when I can get the slightly lesser model and not have to pay anything? And it's a very real problem. So as a result's going to happen, just like Adams' value goes down, so too will Cook's. And Cook could be, since it's running back, you can add a running back the week of a game and still have him be productive. The Steelers have done that before. And if you're willing to sit and be patient, and you know Minnesota doesn't want him, and they want to cut him, basically that's what they've admitted, that's the kind of trade you do for a 7th-round pick. Not Isaiah Simmons, who I've done 2 episodes on about why I believe he's not, because Isaiah Simmons isn't a fit at all for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dalvin Cook is. Dalvin Cook could make a difference on this team. And when we talk about adding a veteran presence to a group that overall was fairly young, that's the kind of person that could do it. Because while Minnesota does not have a history of going deep into the playoffs, they do have a history of winning football games. We've already hired 2 Vikings already on the staff. So there is not a cross-contamination fear of bringing them in and ruining the culture as you do if you bring in someone like a Raider, for instance. You only can bring in so many of those a year or else you will poison the punch jar. So when I look at this saying, I'd love to have Dalvin Cook on this team. I know it's not going to take much. And when I look around the other candidates of I need to buy a running back, well, Baltimore always needs to buy one because they're 30 seconds away from their entire running back room getting hurt again. Okay. There's a lot of teams in the NFL that don't have a second running back. New England is an example of that. Tampa Bay doesn't have a first running back. So there's a market for these people, but it's also one of these things where it's like, I'm Tampa. I'm okay getting the first pick. Why would I give you resources? Why would I give you a very early pick? If you're New England, you're looking around going, I can't fight with these other three offenses. Will bringing in another running back actually make a difference, considering the fact that we don't have receivers on the team? Maybe, maybe not. And you go around, you go around the rest of the league, there's not a clamoring at this point. And when I look at getting, say, hey, a 6th or a 7th round pick is probably going to be enough, especially the longer you wait into camp. Draft day or cut day trades are a real thing. And this is the exact example of the kind of thing you see. A guy who was quality, the team fell apart on him, send him over for basically nothing. And if Dalvin Cook can end up being a Steeler and also accept the role of less than 10 carries a game, you could have yourself not just a great running game, but also literally the best handcuff and best backup in the NFL. And for a team that across the board, especially on offense, has depth oozing out, we have 4 starting guards on this team. We have 3 starting tackles. That's mind-boggling. We have an argument that we have 4 starting receivers when only 2 are going to play because we have 3 starting tight ends. There is so much quality on the Pittsburgh Steelers that people are missing. And the only real weak spot that we don't have is the running back room. And it's mostly because Warren was a nice story, but Warren, when Najee was hurt in the beginning of the year, Warren didn't really show up against Miami, against the Jets, against New England. And it would have been really nice because you could have won any of those 3 games, and he wasn't there. So, yeah, it's a lot to ask, a lot to throw on the guy who's an undrafted free agent. But that's another element. He's an undrafted free agent for a reason. Dalvin Cook is a stud, an absolute stud. Do I think it's going to happen? I think there's a chance of it. I'm going to, bet the wad on it, but I would love to see it happen. And I would absolutely love to see it happen. So, Steelers Nation, let me know if you guys have any other comments, any other things you guys want me to bring up. I certainly want to talk about what's relevant to you guys. Hit me up in the comments. And if you haven't already, please click subscribe, and we'll be with you tomorrow.